In this video, we're going to be adding and subtracting unlike fractions, and these are fractions that have different denominators. That poses a little bit more of a challenge than adding the fractions with the same denominator. So now we're talking about fractions that are different size pieces. So what we need to do is actually get these fractions to have the same size pieces so we can compare apples to apples. So to do that, we have to get a common denominator. And the common denominator, recall, of any two fractions is the least common multiple of the denominators, and that's going to go the same for adding and subtracting. We have to first get a common denominator, and then it'll be just like the problems we did in the last section, which was adding and subtracting like fractions. So let's look at some examples here where we have different denominators. 1/6 plus 3/4. Now we're looking at 6 and 4, sixths and fourths, and we want to find the least common multiple of 6 and 4, and that would be 12. So we're going to rewrite these fractions to have a denominator of 12. And 6 times 2 is 12, so 1/6 would be 2/12, and 4 times 3 is 12, so 3/4 would be 9/12, and there you have it. Now we have fractions with the same denominator. We have like fractions. Now I'm just going to add the numerators to get 11/12, and that does not simplify, so there's my final answer. Next, I have a mixed number plus a fraction. So I'm dealing with fourths and 14ths. The least common multiple of 4 and 14 is actually 28. So I'm going to rewrite these fractions with a denominator of 28. And then I have to adjust the numerators. Well, 4 times 7 is 28, so 3 times 7 is 21. So this is 3 and 21/28. And then 14 times 2 is 28, so 5 times 2 is 10. And now I can add these together to get 3 and 31/28. Well, that causes a little bit of a problem because the fraction part of my mixed number is actually larger than 1. It's an improper fraction. So what's going to happen is I'm going to have to carry over to that whole number. 31/28 is 1 and 3/28. So that 1 is going to get added on to the 3 there. So this is going to be 4 and 3/28. And that is in simplest form. And there's my answer. Next one here, I am adding a negative mixed number. So if you'll remember my tip for adding with negative mixed numbers, I'm going to change these into improper fractions first. So 3 and 3/5 is 18/5, and negative 4 and 5/6 is negative 29/6. So now I have fifths and sixths. I need to find the common denominator of 5 and 6, and that would be 30. So I need to rewrite these fractions with a denominator of 30, and 5 times 6 is 30, so 18 times 6 is 108. And then 6 times 5 is 30, so 29 times 5 is 145, and this is negative 145. So when I add my numerators together, I have 108 plus a negative 145. That gives me negative 37/30, which is negative 1 and 7/30. Either one of those would be fine to write as my result as well. Next one, 3/4 minus 8/9. The common denominator of fourths and ninths would be 36. So I need to rewrite these fractions with a denominator of 36. And 4 times 9 is 36. 3 times 9 is 27. 9 times 4 is 36. 8 times 4 is 32. When I subtract the numerators, 27 minus 32 is negative 5. That gives me negative 5/36, and that is in simplest form. Done there. Again, here I have mixed numbers, and I'm subtracting. positives here. So actually, I think I'm going to keep these as mixed numbers. I don't have any negative mixed numbers here, so I'm going to leave these as mixed numbers. And my least common multiple of 6 and 8, I believe, is 24. So I'm going to rewrite the fraction parts as 24ths. 1/6 is 4 24ths, and 5/8 is 15 24ths. 8 times 3 is 24, 5 times 3 is 15. So now if I try to subtract my whole numbers, I get 7 minus 6. But if I'm looking at the fraction parts, I have to do 4 24ths minus 15 24ths. And that's actually going to give me a negative number. So I don't have enough to subtract the fraction parts. So actually what I can do is I can borrow with a mixed number if you know how to do that. I'm going to take one whole away from the 7, and that gives me 6. And then that's going to give me 24 24ths to add on here. And that makes that 28 24ths. So 6 and 28 24ths is the same as 7 and 4 24ths. So now I can subtract 6 minus 6 is 0, and 28 minus 15 is 13. And I get 13 24ths, and that is in simplest form. Next one, 5 1/3 minus a negative 4 and 5/9. Now I do have a negative mixed number here, but if you recall, subtracting a negative is like adding a positive. So this is like an addition problem. So I'm actually going to think of this as 5 1/3 plus 4 5/9. That way I don't have to convert everything to an improper fraction to do this, and it eliminates the negatives, which makes this a much easier problem to do. And I have to get my common denominator. Least common multiple of 3 and 9 is 9. So 5 1/3 is 5 3/9 plus 4 5/9. That already has a denominator of 9. So now I can add my whole number parts together, and that gives me 9, and add my fraction parts together, and that gives me 8/9, which is in simplest form. And that is that. Finding the least common multiple of the denominators to get like fractions, and then we can use our strategies that we learned to add and subtract fractions and mixed numbers.